And today we're going to be talking about marketing your nonprofit organization here on the Business Wrap. For this conversation, we have an expert panel, and they are.
I'm Cindy Kangas. I am the Director of Development and Community Relations at the Capital Area Humane Society.
And I'm Todd Ross. I'm Manager of Communications at the Michigan Osteopathic Association.
And I'm Paul Schmidt. I'm the Creative Video Strategist for UnoDeuce Multimedia.
You three are the experts, so I'm not going to waste any time and sit up here and talk. I'm going to throw it right over to you, Paul.
Well, thank you, Tony. Well, to lead off this conversation is we're going to talk about marketing and communications. And one of the things that, small businesses think about is we have to market ourselves. But sometimes when it comes to the nonprofit world, marketing seems to be sometimes to the side, even though nonprofits have their competition as well. So let's just start it off with, what are some things that nonprofits and nonprofit organizations need to think about when getting their name out there, getting themselves out there?
This is Cindy. I'll start.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Well, I actually looked it up, and I saw that there are over 47,000 nonprofits in Michigan, and they all do something, but you want to stand out in the crowd. You want to be unique because there are so many places that people can choose to give their money that you really want to be sure that you're telling your story, you're sharing who you are, and you're standing out in the crowd so that people choose you maybe over one of the others.
Cindy, I just want to jump in here really quickly. When it comes to the Humane Society,
yes,
it seems like I would imagine a good majority of people know some aspect of the story. So when you're crafting a message, do you have to highlight something else that maybe people don't know? Because they get the gist, I think, of what the Humane Society is.
Yeah, they do get the gist. They don't always get all of the aspects of what we do. So a lot of times when we do marketing, we try to spotlight a specific dog story or a specific cat story just to kind of pull at the heartstrings a little bit. Or if we're doing something special, for example, we have a food bank for pets that not a lot of people understand about or have heard about before, then we're trying to market around that just because, again, it kind of triggers that response because it's a heart warmer.
Exactly. And the other aspect of it is the Humane Society isn't like animal control or the animal control and shelter. I mean, those are two nonprofits that really pull to the heartstrings of dogs and cat owners and stuff like that, but they do two different things. Sometimes they work in conjunction with each other, but what does one do over the other? Or the Humane Society isn't a pet store. It's, it's one of those organizations that, does the adoptions. It's
tricky to stand out because ultimately people are giving you their dollars. And when you're a nonprofit, the economy tanks or there's, for example, all of these hurricanes that are coming and people are trying to decide, do I want to give my money to these hurricane efforts that I originally had decided I wanted to give to another nonprofit? So you have to really continuously put your message out there so you're out in front of people so that when it's time for them to make decisions about giving, that you're right there for them.
And so one of the aspects that Cindy mentioned the most is the story, finding the story. And that's what nonprofits really have to look at is, what is our story? Who are we trying to reach? What is our audience? What are the messages that we need to get out there that go with our vision, go with our mission, and also, hit the heartstrings of those donors?
I'll share. In the fundraising world, there's a very specific kind of fundraising called Benevon. It's called the Benevon model. And it's all about, the point of entry, first of all, and telling your story and making sure that you're expressing your story to the people that are potentially coming in to be a part of your organization. So it's not a foreign concept. It's just interesting to see how different nonprofits use it.
And Todd, in your experience, what are some of the ways that you've used or seen be successful for nonprofits to really put themselves out there?
Well, I think nonprofits have a different challenge compared to other businesses. I think I always use the term compelling, not selling. Your story has to be compelling to your audience and hopefully expand beyond that. But another good thing is that in the age of social media, there's so many ways to, like Cindy said, keep getting your story out there in ways that aren't a direct sale, not a direct ask. And you can partner with other groups that, we call them friendlies. So I have friendlies on my list. And so we each share what I call the happy news. So we'll share the happy news back and forth and keep engaged with our audiences.
So when you mention compelling, does that always have to tug at somebody's heartstrings to be compelling, or is there other ways that you can craft a campaign to do this effectively?
Well, the Capillary Humane Society gets to use puppies, which is kind of unfair. For our groups that we use, we're in the healthcare avenue. There are a lot of social issues, and we've done research where we know that the up-and-coming members of our association are engaged with social issues. So I work deeply with vaccinations. We're very much a pro-vaccination group. I work with the opioid crisis. Now, those aren't compelling. Nobody wants to talk about addiction, but those are things that show that we're engaged with community health issues that affect everybody.
And this is Paul with UnoDeuce Multimedia. You know, one of the things that sets us apart in what we do is we work with a lot of nonprofit organizations, and the compelling story goes to, you know, showing people that are affected. Why are they impacted? What happened to them? Not just necessarily the consumer or the client, but also the people who work for the nonprofit. Why do they come in every day and do what they do? What is the love of this organization? And those are the stories we try to tell, in which it's not necessarily tugging on the heartstrings, but it's offering a relational aspect to why you should consider this nonprofit.
This is Cindy again. Every nonprofit has a mission. We all have a mission statement. Usually it's about 3 sentences long, and it's just, here's what we do and why we do it. So it all kind of leads back to our mission and how we're sharing our mission with the public.
And it comes down to, like, you know, and that mission is the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about that path in which the nonprofit goes down, and, you know, the folks that are, you know, can relate to what's going on, whether it's an animal, whether it's, you know, a social crisis, because there's going to be people that relate to what's happening out there.
Paul, for you, when it comes to finding that story from a nonprofit organization, is it simply looking at the mission statement and going from that point forward? Or, I mean, they're doing this every single day. This is their job. They know exactly what's going on, and they might not know what can be pulled at the heartstrings or make an impact on somebody. How do you get that out of them to know what to put out there?
Well, basically, to do that, you just have that conversation. You know, you just, how do you do this? I'm coming in as a third party as well. I'm sitting down with these folks. I'm looking at them just like you're looking at me, and wondering, how does this fit? How are you doing this day after day, or you know, just getting to that point, but also seeing what the impact is on the consumer, because that's huge. And then, you know, seeing what that impact is from the worker as well. And that you really ask around the mission. I ask, you know, during your interview, you ask them around what the mission is, and you get right to the heart of it from that. You know, it's just basically a conversation. You sit down, make them comfortable, and then just go from there.
On that note, when somebody is trying to find a target market, what are we looking for when it comes to that? Cindy, everybody is affected. I mean, if we're talking about animals, that you know the market, I would imagine, or is there something deeper that we don't know?
No, I mean, that's all about demographics. Where are we going to put our message? Because in marketing, you know that, you know, it takes, somebody has to see a specific something at least a couple of times before it's ingrained in them and that they're making an action upon it. So we all have to, whether we're a nonprofit or not, look to see where we're putting our message and who's looking at it. Again, they're animal lovers. That's a pretty diverse group, but it just depends. Are we looking at people specifically to give to a certain campaign? Are we searching out volunteers? What am I looking for? And then I have to have a thought about, okay, who do I want this message to go to?
This is Todd here. And you look at events, or you're promoting events, that has a different strategy than just building that tribe, of building those followers. And have your message so that it's connecting with your tribe on a day-to-day basis. I know Cindy brought up the what they're calling donor fatigue with all the hurricanes and the terrible things that are going on. Yeah, I think that if you have that, it kind of feeds off that local stuff too, where you're going to have people that are always going to look back for events that the Humane Society is going to bring up, or whatever it is your organization is going to have. They're always looking to connect with people that are like them, even if it is a broad demographic, like Cindy mentioned.
And that brings up the fact of the audience. You have to know who your market is, and that's not different than any type of organization. And using the tools that are out there to really make sure you hammer home that specific audience, because you have that built-in audience already. And yes, there's donor fatigue here and there, but for the most part, if you've grabbed them before, they're going to keep looking at you in the future. And so, but it's just about reinforcing the message, reinforcing the mission and story, and really making sure that you're understanding your target. And that's the big thing.
Mentioned donor fatigue, and is that something that would be discussed internally at one of your organizations? And is this a point where maybe a marketing campaign would be pushed out, because you guys do rely on donors, if I'm not mistaken? So how does this all work out?
Very much so. I worked at a different nonprofit in the late 2000s, right when the economy tanked, and I remember thinking, that we're going to take a hit, and we didn't. We did okay, just because we had that base, that donor base. But I'd be lying if I said, we weren't panicked about it. And even now, when we sit down, we chat about, what our donors are giving money to. When these big things come up and a donor has maybe $100 to give, and there's a hurricane that they want to give to, then maybe they give $50 to them and they give $50 to us. And we have to figure out, okay, well, how do we make up that difference? Do we share the message with more people, so we potentially bring in another donor? A lot of things play into effect there. But yeah, there's definitely a donor fatigue. And
my question to you guys, this is Paul. Is there a difference in how donors interact? You mentioned, in the mid-2000s, is there a difference between that donor base of then and the donor base of today?
Donors are different, and I think it's more generational. That's what I would say. Like the younger donors, the millennials, whatever, they tend to want to give money, but they also want to be active. So they want to see their money in action. They want to be a part of it. They want their hands dirty. Where, some of the older donors just want you to send them maybe a direct mail card, and they'll send you a check once a year, and it's good. So it's very different to me, generationally, how people give and how they're seeing our messages.
No, I didn't want to use the label millennial, but I mean, there is a different mindset between the approaches of the way the donors were before and now.
And there's not one that's better than the other. You just have to understand how they see things and how they want to interact with you.
This is Todd, and I agree. You're never going to reach everyone with the same channel. So even when we talk about social media, I know my mom, Grand Jan, will be on Facebook. She'll see stuff on Facebook, but she's not going to go on Instagram, and she's not going to go on Snap. She's going to be a Snapchatter. She's not going to go on Twitter. But I know I'm going to reach some of the people I'm targeting through those different channels. So just make the message consistent across the board, but know that you have to tweak it for the different demographics. And sometimes we generalize a little too much, because there are some hipper older folks, but
including Grand Jan, was it?
Grand Jan, yeah.
All right.
She's probably tuning in right now.